The little girls wouldn't stop crying until a boy called 911. What he discovered was shocking. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel and type "Amen" in the comments. A beautiful piece of good news may come your way very soon. And don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. The departure gate at Chicago O'Hare buzzed with typical afternoon chaos, but nothing could mask the piercing wails echoing from boarding gate C7. 3-year-old twins Madison and Mackenzie sat rigid in their pink tutus, tears streaming down their cherubic faces as they clung to each other in seats 12A and 12B of Flight 447 to Los Angeles. "Daddy. We want Daddy," Madison sobbed, her tiny fists rubbing at red-rimmed eyes that had been crying for what felt like hours. The man beside them adjusted his turquoise suit jacket with visible irritation. Victor Steinberg, 35, had meticulously planned every detail of this afternoon operation, but the children's incessant crying was drawing unwanted attention from passengers still boarding the delayed flight. His expensive Italian leather briefcase sat perfectly positioned on his lap, bearing the gold-embossed initials VS that he'd forgotten to conceal. "Girls, please," he whispered harshly, leaning closer with breath that smelled of cigarettes and cheap cologne. "Uncle Victor told you. Daddy is waiting for us in California. But you need to be quiet now, or Daddy won't be happy." Mackenzie's wail only grew louder, her small body trembling with fear. "No. Want Daddy now. You're not Uncle Victor, you're Scary Man." The outburst caused several passengers to turn and stare. Victor's jaw clenched as he forced his practiced smile to remain in place. He'd handled dozens of these special transport cases over the past 5 years. But these particular children were proving more difficult than anticipated. Usually, a few carefully placed threats about their parents' safety were enough to ensure compliance. Flight attendant Sarah Martinez approached with practiced concern, her experienced eyes immediately noting the children's distress and the man's barely controlled agitation. "Is everything all right here?" The girls seemed very upset. Victor's smile never wavered, though his eyes remained cold as winter steel. "Just a difficult day, I'm afraid. Their father had to fly ahead for an emergency business meeting. Major merger falling through. I'm Victor Steinberg, family attorney." He produced official-looking documents from his briefcase with rehearsed efficiency, taking them to reunite with him in Los Angeles. Everything's in perfect order. Sarah glanced at the papers, custody transfer forms with impressive letterhead, travel authorization signed by Daniel Thompson, and Victor's Bar Association credentials from a prestigious Chicago firm. The documentation appeared completely legitimate, professionally prepared with all the right stamps and signatures, though something nagged at her intuition. In her 12 years of service, she'd learned to trust those subtle warning signals. "Daddy's name is different," Madison whispered through her tears, her small voice barely audible above the airplane's ambient noise. Victor's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a micro-expression that lasted less than a second but revealed cracks in his composure. "Daddy changed his name for work, sweetheart. Remember what Uncle Victor explained? Sometimes daddies have to use different names when they travel for very important business meetings." The boarding process continued around them, passengers storing luggage in overhead compartments and settling into their seats with the usual pre-flight routine. The twins' crying had subsided to quiet whimpers punctuated by occasional hiccups, but their distress remained palpable to anyone paying attention. Several passengers cast sympathetic glances, assuming they were witnessing a common travel scenario. Young children upset about flying and missing their father. A businessman in row 10 shook his head sympathetically. "Poor little things. Flying's hard enough for adults." An elderly woman across the aisle offered a knowing smile. "Traveling with children is never easy. At least they have their uncle to help." Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom with the authority of 20 years' experience. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief delay due to air traffic control congestion. We'll be boarding our final passengers momentarily and should be airborne within the next 20 to 25 minutes. Flight attendants, please prepare for final boarding procedures." Victor checked his gold Rolex, 3:47 p.m. His contact in Los Angeles expected them by 7 p.m. Pacific time for the handoff to the international courier. Everything remained precisely on schedule, despite the children's emotional outburst. He'd dealt with far more challenging situations in his 15-year career, facilitating special adoptions for wealthy clients who preferred to avoid traditional channels and background checks. The network he worked for specialized in providing perfect children to buyers who had very specific requirements: young, beautiful, intelligent children from good genetic stock. Madison and Mackenzie Thompson fit the profile exactly. Blonde hair, blue eyes, clearly well cared for, and from an affluent family background. The buyer in Tokyo had paid triple the usual rate for twins matching this exact description. A commotion near the boarding gate caught his attention and sent a chill down his spine. A scruffy boy, maybe 7 years old, argued heatedly with the gate agent while clutching a wrinkled boarding pass in his small, dirty hands. His clothes hung loose and worn, clearly hand-me-downs that had seen better days, and his dark hair looked like it hadn't been properly cut in months. But it was his eyes that made Victor nervous. Sharp, intelligent, and far too knowing for a child his age. "Please, lady, my foster mom bought this ticket," the boy pleaded with desperate urgency. "I gotta get to my aunt in LA. She's the only family I got left in the whole world." Gate agent Patricia Wong examined the electronic ticket on her scanner with growing concern, her professional expression shifting to worry. "Timothy Chen, seat 15F. This ticket was purchased just 2 hours ago with a credit card that's been reported stolen by its owner." "No, that ain't right." Timothy's voice cracked with desperation and disbelief. "Mrs. Rodriguez from Social Services helped me buy it herself. She said my Aunt Rebecca is waiting for me at LAX with a big sign with my name on it." "I'm sorry, son, but I can't allow you to board with this ticket. Security will need to verify your story and contact Social Services before we can resolve this situation." Timothy felt his world crashing down around him. He'd run away from his latest foster home after catching Mr. Peterson hitting the younger kids again with his belt while drunk. Nobody ever believed him when he reported abuse. They just shuffled him to another home where the same things happened, sometimes worse. This time, he'd found his aunt's address online through hours of searching at the public library and scraped together enough money for a bus ticket to the airport, but the ticket counter said he needed an adult to purchase airfare. That's when the kind lady had approached him outside the terminal offering to help. She'd seemed so genuine, so concerned about his welfare, with tears in her eyes as she listened to his story. But now everything was falling apart again, just like it always did. Just when he thought he might finally find someone who actually wanted him. "Wait," Timothy said, his street-smart instincts suddenly screaming danger as he spotted something through the aircraft's open door that made his blood run cold. 2 little girls in pink tutus were crying, while a man in an expensive suit tried to quiet them with increasingly aggressive gestures. But something was fundamentally wrong with this picture. The twins kept reaching toward the gate area crying, "Daddy," while the man roughly pushed their hands down and whispered harsh words in their ears. Their body language screamed fear, not familiarity. Timothy had seen enough scared kids in foster care to recognize the signs of children in distress. The way they curled into themselves, the particular quality of their cries, the way they instinctively tried to distance themselves from threatening adults. And then he saw the detail that confirmed his suspicions. The man's briefcase bore the initials VS in gold lettering, but the boarding pass Patricia Wong had shown him earlier listed the passenger as David Sterling. Timothy's mind raced with the implications. That man, Timothy pointed toward the plane with growing certainty, his voice low but urgent. "He ain't their daddy." Patricia Wong followed Timothy's pointing finger with practiced precision, her trained eyes taking in every detail of the scene aboard the aircraft. The well-dressed man appeared completely legitimate on the surface. Expensive designer suit, proper documentation, calm demeanor, and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. But the child's observation triggered her professional instincts, honed by 8 years of processing passengers and countless hours of security training. "What makes you think that, honey?" Patricia asked gently, crouching to Timothy's eye level while maintaining visual contact with the aircraft. Her voice carried the careful neutrality of someone trained to handle sensitive situations. "Look at them girls real careful like," Timothy insisted, his voice urgent but controlled, displaying wisdom beyond his 7 years. "They keep reaching this way, crying for daddy like he's supposed to be coming from here, not sitting right next to them." If that man was really their daddy, they'd be reaching for him, trying to get comfort from him, not pulling away like he's gonna hurt them. Patricia's expression shifted as she processed the child's logic. Children's behavior patterns were often the most reliable indicators of family relationships. What else do you notice? And look how he keeps checking his watch and looking around nervous-like. Real daddies don't act scared when their babies cry. They just pick them up and make them feel better. Timothy paused, then added with the confidence of hard-earned experience. Plus, them girls keep saying their daddy's name is different. Little kids don't lie about their own daddy's name, ma'am. They just don't. Patricia felt her pulse quicken as she activated her radio discreetly, using code words that wouldn't alarm nearby passengers. Gate C7 to security control. Need immediate welfare check on Flight 447, seats 12A and 12B. Possible family emergency situation requiring supervisor response. Meanwhile, aboard the aircraft, Victor sensed the increased scrutiny from the boarding area like a predator detecting danger. The twins had stopped their loud crying after his whispered threats about what would happen to their real daddy if they didn't behave, but Madison kept whispering just loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Daddy has different eyes. Daddy smells like cookies when he hugs us, not scary smell like cigarettes. Mackenzie nodded vigorously, adding in her small voice, Daddy sings the butterfly song. This man don't know the butterfly song. Flight attendant Sarah Martinez returned, this time accompanied by her supervisor, Janet Kim, a 20-year veteran with an impressive record of identifying suspicious situations. Mr. Sterling, we're conducting routine verification procedures for unaccompanied minors. Could you provide additional identification and perhaps answer a few questions about the children's preferences? Victor's composure never cracked, though his left eye developed an almost imperceptible twitch. He reached into his jacket with practiced smoothness, producing an Illinois driver's license that read, David Sterling with his photograph, a masterpiece of forgery that had cost him $5,000. Of course, I completely understand your concern for the children's safety and security. The license looked perfect under casual inspection. Proper hologram, correct font, appropriate wear patterns. But Janet noticed that his hands trembled slightly as he held it, a nervous tell that experienced criminals usually controlled better. Timothy pressed closer to the aircraft door, his sharp eyes catching details that adults missed in their focus on documentation and procedure. The man's expensive watch was a fake. Timothy had learned to spot counterfeit luxury items during his time in various foster homes where older kids dealt in stolen goods. More importantly, the twins' reaction when the man touched them was unmistakable fear, not the comfortable familiarity children showed with trusted family members. Ma'am, Timothy called to Janet Kim with respectful determination. Ask them girls what their daddy's favorite color is, then ask that man. Ask them what their daddy likes to eat for breakfast. Ask them what daddy calls them when he tucks them in at night. Real daddies know stuff like that. Janet exchanged meaningful glances with Sarah. The suggestion was unusual but completely reasonable for verifying family relationships. She approached the twins, kneeling in the airplane aisle with the gentle manner she'd perfected during thousands of interactions with young passengers. Madison, Mackenzie, can you tell me what Daddy's favorite color is? Blue, Madison said immediately, her tears momentarily forgotten in the joy of talking about her father. Dark blue like the sky when it's almost nighttime and the stars are just starting to come out. And what does Daddy like to eat for breakfast on special mornings? Janet continued, watching the girls' faces light up with genuine happiness. Pancakes with Mickey Mouse shape, Mackenzie added enthusiastically, bouncing slightly in her seat. And orange juice in the special cup with his name on it that me and Maddie gave him for Father's Day. What does Daddy call you when he tucks you in at night? His little butterflies, both girls said in perfect unison, their voices filled with love and security. And he sings the butterfly song about flying safe in our dreams. Janet turned to Victor with professional courtesy masking growing suspicion. Mr. Sterling, what's your favorite color? Victor hesitated for just a fraction of a second, barely noticeable to most observers, but Timothy caught it like a hawk spotting prey. Navy blue, naturally. Always been my favorite since childhood. And what do you like to eat for breakfast with the girls? Pancakes, especially on weekends. We make them together, it's our special tradition. His answer came too quickly. too rehearsed. "What name is on your special cup?" Timothy called out before anyone could stop him, his young voice cutting through the aircraft's ambient noise. "Timothy, please." Patricia tried to intervene from the doorway, but the boy's question hung in the air like a challenge. Victor's face darkened with poorly concealed anger. "I think this child is causing unnecessary disruption to airline operations. Perhaps security should escort him away so we can depart on schedule and these girls can be reunited with their father." But Madison looked up with innocent confusion that no adult could fake. "Daddy's cup says Marcus in big blue letters. Why don't you know Daddy's real name? Why don't you know the butterfly song?" The airplane fell silent except for the steady hum of air conditioning and the distant sounds of airport operations. Janet Kim's extensive training kicked in immediately, and she signaled to Sarah, who quickly moved to block the aisle behind Victor while maintaining the appearance of routine service. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step off the aircraft for additional verification procedures," Janet said with firm authority, her hand already reaching for the emergency communication button. Timothy felt his heart pounding against his ribs, but his voice remained steady. He'd seen the same scenario play out before in foster care. Adults who claimed to be family members but whose stories crumbled under basic scrutiny. Predators often posed as relatives or family friends to gain access to vulnerable children, and the system was full of kids who'd been hurt by people they were told to trust. Victor stood slowly, his mask of civility beginning to slip like paint peeling off a wall. "This is absolutely absurd. You're taking the word of some street child over a licensed attorney with proper documentation and legal authority." "Mister, I may be just a street kid," Timothy said, stepping fully into the aircraft doorway with courage that belied his small size. "But I know scared babies when I see them. And I know fake papers when I see them too. Spend enough time around people who lie for a living." He pulled his cell phone from his pocket, an ancient flip phone from 2018 that barely functioned, but could still make emergency calls. With practiced speed born of necessity, he dialed the 3 numbers every foster kid knew by heart and hoped they'd never need to use. 911, this is Timothy Chen at O'Hare Airport, Gate C7. There's a man trying to kidnap 2 little girls on Flight 447 to Los Angeles. He says he's their daddy, but he ain't. The babies keep crying for their real daddy, and this man don't even know basic stuff about them. Victor lunged toward Timothy with sudden violence, but Sarah Martinez stepped between them with the fluid motion of someone trained in crisis management. "Sir, you need to remain calm and cooperate fully with our security protocols." The 911 dispatcher's voice was clear enough for others to hear through Timothy's phone. "Stay on the line, Timothy. We're dispatching units immediately to your location. Can you describe the man and provide details about the situation?" "Turquoise suit, about 35 years old. Brown hair with fancy haircut, carrying a briefcase with VS. Initials but claims his name is David Sterling. The little girls are maybe 3 years old. Blonde twins in pink tutus named Madison and Mackenzie. They keep saying their real daddy's name is Marcus, and this man don't know nothing about their daddy's favorite things." Timothy paused, his sharp mind processing connections that adults might miss, then added the detail that would change everything. "And ma'am, I think their real daddy might be Marcus Thompson. That's what I heard them say before, and I bet there's missing person reports or something. These babies been crying like their hearts are broken." The name Marcus Thompson electrified the 911 dispatcher like lightning striking twice in the same place. Within seconds, she was frantically cross-referencing active missing persons reports while keeping Timothy on the line, her fingers flying across computer keys with urgent precision. "Timothy, you may have just solved an Amber Alert that went out 6 hours ago. Marcus Thompson, CEO of Thompson Industries, reported his 3-year-old twin daughters missing from their Chicago daycare this afternoon. Every law enforcement agency in the Midwest has been searching for Madison and Mackenzie Thompson since 2 o'clock. The dispatcher's voice carried a mix of relief and professional urgency. "Multiple units are converging on your location. Keep those children in sight and stay on the line. You may have just prevented an international kidnapping." As if summoned by fate itself, the airport's main terminal erupted in controlled chaos. Marcus Thompson, 40, CEO of Thompson Industries and one of Chicago's most prominent businessmen, burst through the security checkpoint with 2 Chicago police detectives flanking him and airport security clearing a path ahead. His usually immaculate appearance was completely disheveled. White dress shirt wrinkled and partially untucked, navy tie askew, his thick dark hair looking like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. His face was etched with 6 hours of pure terror, the kind of anguish that only a parent facing their worst nightmare could understand. "Madison! Mackenzie!" Marcus's voice boomed across the gate area with desperate authority as he spotted his daughters through the aircraft doorway. The sound carried the raw emotion of a father who had spent the longest 6 hours of his life imagining scenarios too horrible to contemplate. The twins' reaction was instantaneous and unmistakable, like flowers turning toward sunlight. "Daddy!" they screamed in perfect unison, their tears transforming instantly from distress to overwhelming relief and pure joy. They struggled frantically against their seatbelts, reaching toward their father with desperate urgency, their small bodies practically vibrating with the need to be in his arms. "Daddy! Daddy! The scary man said you weren't coming," Madison cried, her voice breaking with emotion. "We knew you'd find us. We knew it," Mackenzie added, her face glowing with absolute faith in her father's ability to rescue them. Victor Steinberg's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely like a house of cards in a hurricane. He backed toward the aircraft's emergency exit with the desperation of a cornered animal. But airport security had already surrounded the plane with military precision. Detective Maria Santos stepped aboard, her hand resting on her service weapon and her voice carrying 20 years of law enforcement authority. "Victor Steinberg, you're under arrest for kidnapping, child endangerment, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit human trafficking," she announced with grim satisfaction. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As handcuffs clicked around Victor's wrists with metallic finality, Marcus rushed past the officers and airline personnel to embrace his daughters. The reunion was electric with emotion. Madison and Mackenzie clung to their father with fierce intensity, their small bodies shaking with residual fear and overwhelming relief. Marcus lifted both girls simultaneously, holding them as if he would never let them go again. "Daddy, the scary man said you weren't coming." Madison sobbed into his neck, her small arms wrapped around him like a lifeline. "Daddy's here now, Princess. Daddy will always come for you. Always," Marcus whispered, his own tears flowing freely as he breathed in the familiar scent of their strawberry shampoo. "Nobody will ever take you away from Daddy again. We told the airplane lady about the butterfly song," Mackenzie said proudly through her tears. The scary man didn't know it. "You were so brave, my little butterflies. So incredibly brave." Detective Santos began processing the crime scene with methodical efficiency, but her attention was drawn to the small boy standing quietly near the boarding gate. Timothy Chen watched the family reunion with an expression that mixed genuine happiness for the girls with profound longing, the look of a child who had never experienced that kind of unconditional love and security. "You're the one who called 911? Detective Santos approached Timothy with genuine respect and admiration. "Yes, ma'am. Them babies needed help real bad. Son, you just prevented an international kidnapping. Victor Steinberg works for a sophisticated child trafficking ring that supplies wealthy clients overseas who pay premium prices for American children matching specific characteristics. These girls would have disappeared forever into a network we've been trying to crack for 3 years." Detective Santos paused, studying Timothy's worn clothes and street-smart demeanor. "Where are your parents, Timothy?" "Don't got none. Been in the foster system since I was 4 when my mom died in a car crash. Never knew my dad. Mom never told me nothing about him." Marcus looked up from comforting his daughters, his eyes finding Timothy with growing intensity. Up close, the boy's situation was even more heartbreaking. Clothes that had clearly seen too many washes, shoes held together with duct tape and determination, and eyes that held far too much knowledge and pain for someone so young. But there was something else. Something that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. "What's your name, son?" "I'm Timothy Chen. I'm 7.5 years old. I turned 7 this past March." "Where were you trying to go today, Timothy?" "My Aunt Rebecca in L.A. She's supposed to be the only family I might have left, but the ticket was bought with a stolen credit card, so they won't let me fly." Timothy's voice cracked with fresh disappointment. "Story of my life. Every time I think I might find someone who actually wants me, it falls apart. Detective Santos checked her notes with growing concern. Timothy, we contacted our LA office about Rebecca Chen at the address you provided. There is no Rebecca Chen at that location. That address is actually a parking lot behind a shopping mall. Timothy's face crumpled with the weight of another shattered hope. Another dead end, another broken promise, another reminder that he was alone in the world. He'd convinced himself that maybe, just maybe, he could find someone who actually wanted him, someone who would choose him instead of just tolerating his presence until the next placement. But Marcus was studying Timothy's face with growing intensity and disbelief, an impossible thought forming in his mind as he took in every detail of the boy's appearance. The child's dark hair had the same stubborn cowlick that Marcus had fought his entire life. The determined set of his jaw was identical to Marcus's own childhood photographs. And those eyes, deep brown with distinctive gold flecks around the iris, exactly like Marcus's late father, exactly like the eyes that stared back at him from the mirror every morning. Timothy, Marcus said carefully, his voice barely controlled as Madison and Mackenzie settled quietly in his arms. What was your mother's full name? Jennifer Chen. She was really smart, worked as a nurse at the university hospital. Why? Marcus's world tilted on its axis as memories flooded back with crushing clarity. Jennifer Chen, the brilliant, beautiful woman he'd dated during their senior year at Northwestern University. The woman who'd captured his heart completely, who'd made him believe in forever, who'd disappeared without explanation during spring semester. The woman who'd never returned his calls, never answered his desperate letters, never given him a chance to understand what went wrong. The woman he'd loved enough to buy an engagement ring for, who'd vanished from his life like she'd never existed, leaving only questions and heartbreak. Timothy, when exactly did you turn 7 this year? March 15th. I'm 7.5 now. Timothy's street-smart instincts were telling him this conversation was heading somewhere important. Marcus did rapid mental calculations with trembling hands, his brilliant business mind working through dates and timelines with mathematical precision. March 15th, 2017. Exactly 9 months and 2 weeks after the last night he'd spent with Jennifer, before she disappeared without a trace. 9 months and 2 weeks after the night they'd talked about their future together, about marriage and children and building a life together. Detective Santos, Marcus said, his voice barely controlled as earth-shattering realization crashed over him like a tsunami. I need to request an emergency DNA test immediately. Timothy looked confused but hopeful, his sharp mind beginning to piece together the impossible puzzle. DNA test? What kind of DNA test? Why? Marcus knelt carefully to Timothy's eye level while still holding Madison and Mackenzie, his heart hammering against his ribs so hard he could barely breathe. Son, I think you might be more than just a hero who saved my daughters. I think you might be my son too. The airport gate fell completely silent except for the distant sounds of normal airport operations and the twins' quiet babbling as they played with their father's tie. Timothy stared at Marcus with growing comprehension, his street-smart mind processing the implications faster than the adults around him, hope and disbelief warring in his expression. You think you're my dad? My real dad? I think your mom was someone very special to me, Timothy. Someone I loved more than anything in the world. Someone I never stopped wondering about, never stopped missing. Marcus's eyes filled with tears as 17 years of questions suddenly had the possibility of answers. What if I told you that the reason you were brave enough to save Madison and Mackenzie is because protecting family is in your blood? What if I told you that everything you did today was the action of a big brother protecting his little sisters? Timothy's carefully constructed tough exterior began to crack, revealing the vulnerable, longing child underneath who had spent years dreaming of this exact moment. You mean, I might really have a daddy? A real daddy who actually wants me? Marcus opened his arms wide and Timothy hesitated for just a heartbeat before stepping into them. The embrace felt absolutely right in a way that defied logical explanation, like puzzle pieces that had been separated for years finally clicking into perfect place. Madison and Mackenzie immediately accepted Timothy into the family hug, their innocent acceptance completing the circle. Daddy, is Timothy really our brother? Madison asked with the direct simplicity that only 3-year-olds possessed. I think he might be, Princess. I think he very well might be. Detective Santos watched the impossible reunion unfold before her eyes, already making mental notes for what would undoubtedly be the most extraordinary report of her 20-year career. Sometimes, she reflected with wonder, the universe conspired to right its own wrongs in the most miraculous and unexpected ways. As Marcus held all 3 children against him, Timothy whispered against his shoulder with a voice full of wonder and cautious hope. I always knew my daddy would be someone special, someone brave and good. I just never thought he'd be someone who loves his kids enough to chase down airplanes and fight the whole world to save them. Marcus felt his heart expand with a love he'd never imagined possible, even beyond his fierce devotion to Madison and Mackenzie. Timothy, if you are my son, and I believe with everything in me that you are, then you've been protecting your family from the very first moment you saw your sisters in trouble. You've been their big brother hero without even knowing it. The flight to Los Angeles was officially canceled, but nobody minded. The Thompson family, after 17 years of separation and loss, had finally found all its missing pieces in the most extraordinary way imaginable. As airport personnel began clearing the aircraft and processing the crime scene, Marcus found himself unable to let go of any of his children. The reality of what had almost happened, losing Madison and Mackenzie forever, and never discovering Timothy's existence, hit him with overwhelming force. His successful business empire, his penthouse downtown, his carefully ordered life meant absolutely nothing compared to this moment. Daddy, Mackenzie said softly, her small hand touching Timothy's cheek with innocent curiosity. Timothy has the same eyes as you, like pretty brown marbles with gold sparkles. Madison nodded solemnly, studying Timothy with the intense focus that only 3-year-olds could muster. And he's brave like you, Daddy. He saved us from the scary man. Timothy felt tears threatening for the first time since his mother's funeral. These 2 little girls who had every reason to be traumatized and afraid were welcoming him with pure acceptance. I never had little sisters before, he whispered. Well, now you got 2, Madison declared with absolute certainty. And we're really good sisters. We share our toys and everything. Detective Santos approached the reunited family with a clipboard and a gentle expression. Mr. Thompson, we'll need to process some paperwork, but given the circumstances, we can arrange for the DNA test to be expedited. Results could be available as early as tomorrow afternoon. Marcus nodded, though his heart already knew the truth with certainty that transcended science. Detective, what happens to Timothy tonight? He can't go back to the foster system, not after what he's been through. Actually, Detective Santos smiled. Given that he's a key witness in a federal kidnapping case and considering the unusual circumstances, we have some flexibility, if you're willing to provide temporary custody while we sort out the legal details. Yes, Marcus said immediately, his voice firm with conviction. Absolutely yes. Timothy belongs with us. Timothy looked up with wonder and disbelief. You mean, I can stay with you, even if the test shows I'm not? Timothy, Marcus interrupted gently. The DNA test will only confirm what I already know in my heart. But even if by some impossible chance we're not biologically related, you saved my daughter's lives. You showed more courage and integrity than most adults ever will. You'll always have a place in our family. The boy's tough exterior finally crumbled completely. 17 years of rejection, abandonment, and loneliness poured out in quiet sobs that shook his small frame. Marcus held him tighter, recognizing the release of years of pain. Airport Security Chief Robert Martinez joined the group, his expression mixing professional admiration with personal emotion. Son, in 30 years of airport security, I've never seen anything like what you did today. You didn't just save 2 children. You helped us crack a trafficking ring that's been operating for years. He paused, studying Timothy's worn clothes and thin frame. Mr. Thompson, if there's anything the airport can do to help this young man, anything at all, you just let us know. Marcus felt a surge of pride looking at Timothy, this brave, intelligent boy who might be his son, who had risked everything for strangers. Actually, Robert, Timothy's going to need some new clothes. Everything he owns is in a foster home he can never return to. Consider it done. Robert replied immediately. "We have connections with every store in the airport. This hero gets whatever he needs." As they prepared to leave the gate area, Timothy suddenly stopped walking. "Mr. Thompson? Marcus, I gotta ask you something." "What is it, son?" "My mom, Jennifer. Why didn't she ever tell me about you? Why did she disappear like that?" Marcus knelt down, his expression growing serious and sad. "Timothy, I've wondered about that every day for 17 years. Your mother was the most honest, loving person I ever knew. If she didn't tell me about you, if she felt she had to disappear, there must have been a reason. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she thought she was protecting you somehow. We may never know the whole truth." Timothy nodded slowly, processing this with the wisdom of a child who had learned early that adults didn't always make perfect decisions. Do you think she would be happy about us finding each other?" Marcus's eyes filled with fresh tears as he imagined Jennifer watching this reunion from wherever she was. "Timothy, I think she would be incredibly proud of the man you're becoming. And I think she would be so happy to know that you're finally home." The word home hung in the air like a promise. Timothy had never really understood what that word meant before. He'd lived in houses, apartments, temporary placements, but never a real home where he belonged unconditionally. Can I call you Dad?" Timothy asked hesitantly. "I would be honored," Marcus replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Dad," Timothy said, testing the word like it was made of precious metal. "I like how that sounds." Madison tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Daddy, I'm hungry. Can we go get McDonald's and show Timothy our house?" "Our house," Marcus corrected gently. "It's Timothy's house too now." As they walked through the airport toward baggage claim, Marcus's phone buzzed with dozens of missed calls and text messages. His assistant, the police, reporters who had somehow gotten wind of the story, business associates wondering why he'd left the office so abruptly. None of it mattered. "Dad?" Timothy said as they rode the escalator down. "Yes, son? I know I'm just a foster kid and you're like super rich and important and stuff, but I promise I'll learn how to be a good son. I'll study hard and be respectful and help take care of Madison and Mackenzie and—" "Timothy," Marcus interrupted softly, "you don't have to earn your place in this family. You saved my daughters because it was the right thing to do, not because you wanted something in return. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." They reached the main terminal, where news crews were already setting up, having caught wind of the dramatic rescue. Marcus instinctively moved to shield his children from the cameras. "Mr. Thompson," a reporter called out, "is it true your son prevented an international kidnapping?" Marcus stopped, looked down at Timothy, Madison, and Mackenzie, then back at the cameras. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of a man who had just experienced the most important day of his life. "My children, all 3 of my children, are safe. That's all that matters. Timothy showed extraordinary courage today, but more than that, he showed us what it means to be family. Sometimes the most important bonds aren't the ones we're born with, but the ones we choose." He paused, his arm around Timothy's shoulders. "And sometimes when we're very lucky, we discover that the family we choose was actually the family we were meant to have all along." As they walked toward the exit, Timothy whispered, "Dad, thank you for choosing me." "Son," Marcus replied, his heart fuller than he'd ever imagined possible, "thank you for choosing us first." The automatic doors opened, and the Thompson family, now complete, stepped out into the Chicago afternoon, ready to begin their new life together. 24 hours later, the Thompson family sat in the sterile waiting room of Chicago Memorial Hospital's DNA testing facility, their lives balanced on the edge of scientific confirmation. Timothy perched on the edge of his chair, his new clothes, a crisp blue button-down shirt and khaki pants that Marcus had insisted on buying the previous evening, still feeling foreign against his skin. Madison and Mackenzie flanked him like protective bookends, their small hands occasionally reaching out to touch his arm, as if reassuring themselves that their new big brother was real. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell emerged from the laboratory with a manila envelope that contained the power to officially change 4 lives forever. Her expression was carefully neutral. trained by years of delivering results that could either reunite families or shatter dreams permanently. "Mr. Thompson, I have the results of the paternity test," she announced with professional courtesy, though her eyes held a warmth that suggested good news. Marcus stood slowly, his successful businessman's composure masking the fact that his heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Doctor, before you tell us anything, I want Timothy to know that regardless of what that envelope says, he's my son. DNA doesn't make a family. Love does." Timothy looked up with eyes that held 17 years of abandonment and 24 hours of hope. "It's okay, Dad. Whatever it says, yesterday was the best day of my whole life. Nothing can change that." Dr. Hartwell smiled, unable to maintain her clinical detachment any longer. "Well then, I'm delighted to confirm what your hearts already knew. Timothy Chen is definitely, unquestionably, biologically your son, Mr. Thompson. The probability of paternity is 997%. The waiting room erupted in celebration. Madison and Mackenzie cheered with the pure joy that only 3-year-olds could express, jumping up and down while clapping their hands. Timothy felt tears of relief and overwhelming happiness streaming down his face. For the first time in his life, he truly belonged somewhere. Marcus swept all 3 children into his arms, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm his carefully maintained executive composure. "Timothy, you are officially, legally, scientifically, my son, my eldest child, my boy. And we're officially, really, truly sisters," Madison declared with absolute satisfaction. But Dr. Hartwell wasn't finished. "Mr. Thompson, there's something else you should know. The blood work revealed some concerning findings about Timothy's health." The celebration stopped immediately. Marcus felt ice forming in his veins as he set the children down and focused entirely on the doctor. "What kind of findings?" "Timothy is severely malnourished, has anemia, and shows signs of chronic stress that have affected his physical development. He's significantly underweight for his age and height. However," she smiled reassuringly, "all of these conditions are completely treatable with proper nutrition, medical care, and a stable environment." Timothy looked confused and slightly ashamed. "Does that mean I'm sick? Does that mean—" "It means you've been incredibly strong, surviving circumstances that would have broken many adults," Dr. Hartwell interrupted gently. "But now you have a family who can help you become as healthy as you are brave." Marcus knelt in front of Timothy, his expression fierce with protective love. "Son, we're going to take care of everything. You'll see the best doctors, eat the best food, and never ever have to worry about having enough again." As they left the hospital, Timothy was quiet, processing the magnitude of how his life had changed in less than 2 days. From sleeping in a foster home where he went to bed hungry most nights, to having a father who was already talking about enrolling him in the best private school in Chicago. "Dad?" Timothy said as they settled into Marcus's luxury SUV. "Yes, son. Can I ask you something about my mom? About Jennifer?" Marcus's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. He'd spent the past 24 hours trying to piece together why Jennifer had vanished without telling him about Timothy. "Of course, ask me anything. Do you think she loved me? I mean, really loved me, not just took care of me because she had to?" The question broke Marcus's heart. He pulled over to the side of the road and turned to face Timothy directly. "Son, your mother loved you more than life itself. I know this because of how she raised you. But she put me in foster care when she died. She didn't have family for me to go to." "Timothy, listen to me carefully. Your mother was a nurse, which means she was incredibly smart and dedicated to helping people. If she didn't tell me about you, if she didn't make arrangements for us to be together, there had to be a reason. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she thought she was protecting you from something. But the way you turned out, brave, kind, protective of others, that's how I know she loved you completely." Timothy considered this with the serious expression of a child forced to grow up too quickly. "I wish I could remember more about her. I was only 4 when she died." Madison leaned forward from her car seat. "Timothy, you can share our daddy. And maybe Daddy has pictures of your mommy from when they were friends." Marcus felt his breath catch. He did have pictures. an entire box of memories from his college years that he'd never been able to throw away. Photos of Jennifer laughing, studying, the two of them together at campus events. Pictures that could help Timothy understand who his mother had been. Actually, Madison's right. I do have pictures. When we get home, I'll show you some photos of your mom when she was young. You have her smile, you know. Timothy's face lit up with wonder. Really? I look like her? You have her smile and her kind heart. But you have my stubborn determination and apparently my talent for getting into trouble when it's the right thing to do. They drove through the affluent Lincoln Park neighborhood, past perfectly manicured lawns and stately homes that represented a world Timothy had only seen on television. When Marcus pulled into the circular driveway of a sprawling Georgian mansion, Timothy's jaw dropped. This is where you live? Where we live. This is home, Marcus confirmed, watching Timothy take in the impressive facade, the professional landscaping, the 3-car garage that probably cost more than most people's houses. The inside was even more overwhelming. Soaring ceilings, original artwork, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Timothy stood in the marble foyer, afraid to touch anything. It's beautiful, he whispered. But it's so fancy. What if I break something? Mackenzie grabbed his hand with absolute confidence. Come on, Timothy. We'll show you our playroom and your new bedroom and the kitchen where Chef makes the best cookies. As his sisters dragged him through the house, Timothy marveled at rooms larger than entire apartments he'd lived in. The playroom alone was bigger than most foster homes, filled with toys and books and games that Madison and Mackenzie clearly took for granted. This is going to be your room, Madison announced, throwing open a door to reveal a bedroom that took Timothy's breath away. King-sized bed with a navy blue comforter, built-in bookshelves, a desk by the window overlooking the garden, and more space than he'd ever had to himself. The decorator came yesterday while you were getting your blood test, Marcus explained, appearing in the doorway. We can change anything you don't like. Timothy walked slowly around the room, touching the soft comforter, running his fingers along the smooth desk surface. Nobody's ever made a room just for me before. That evening, after dinner prepared by the family's chef, more food than Timothy usually saw in a week, Marcus kept his promise. They gathered in his study, a wood-paneled room filled with leather-bound books and family photos, where Marcus opened a cardboard box he hadn't touched in 17 years. These are from Northwestern University when your mom and I were dating, Marcus said softly, spreading photographs across his desk. Timothy's eyes immediately locked onto a photo of a young woman with his exact smile, dark hair, and kind eyes. Jennifer Chen at 21, laughing at something outside the camera's range, her whole face glowing with happiness. She's beautiful, Timothy whispered, touching the photo gently. She looks happy. She was happy. We both were. We used to study together at the library, go to Cubs games, talk about changing the world. Marcus picked up another photo, him and Jennifer at a formal dance, her in a blue dress that matched her eyes, both of them looking impossibly young and in love. Why did she leave? Timothy asked the question that had been haunting both of them. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying a photo of Jennifer helping at a campus blood drive, her natural compassion evident even in a candid shot. Son, I've been thinking about that constantly since yesterday. Your mom disappeared in March of our senior year, right when she would have realized she was pregnant with you. Timothy's quick mind immediately grasped the timeline. So she knew about me but didn't tell you. The only explanation that makes sense, knowing your mother's character, is that she thought she was protecting you, or protecting me. Jennifer was incredibly selfless. Maybe she thought my family would reject her, or that having a baby would ruin my career plans. Maybe she was scared of my father. Your father? Marcus's expression darkened with old pain. My father was difficult, controlling. He had very specific ideas about who I should marry, what my life should look like. He probably would have tried to interfere if he'd known about you and your mother. Where is he now? He died 5 years ago. Heart attack. Marcus paused, then added with bitter irony, he never got to meet Madison and Mackenzie either. He was too busy disapproving of their mother to be part of their lives. Timothy absorbed this information with the emotional intelligence of a child who had learned early to read between the lines of adult complications. So maybe my mom thought she was saving me from a mean grandfather. Maybe. Your mother was incredibly smart, Timothy. If she made the choice she did, she had reasons that seemed right to her at the time. Madison had fallen asleep curled against Marcus's side, while Mackenzie dozed in his lap. Timothy carefully gathered the photos, studying each one as if memorizing his mother's face. "Dad?" Timothy said quietly. "I'm glad she didn't tell you back then." Marcus looked surprised. "Why?" "Because if she had, you might not have been ready to be the kind of dad you are now, and Madison and Mackenzie might not exist. And yesterday, when they needed a hero, maybe you wouldn't have taught me how to be brave enough to save them." The wisdom in Timothy's words left Marcus speechless. This 7-year-old boy had just articulated a perspective on fate and family that most adults couldn't grasp. "Besides," Timothy continued with a small smile, "if Mom had told you about me back then, I never would have learned how to spot bad guys and protect little kids, and your daughters needed someone who knew how to do that." Marcus felt his heart swell with pride and amazement at his son's resilience and insight. "Timothy, you are going to be an extraordinary man. I'm going to be just like you, Dad. Strong and brave and someone who protects his family no matter what." As Marcus carried the sleeping girls to their beds and Timothy clutched his favorite photo of Jennifer against his chest, none of them knew that tomorrow would bring a revelation that would add one final, incredible piece to their family puzzle. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor who would change everything once again. Marcus was in his home office working through the legal paperwork to officially adopt Timothy and change his last name to Thompson when the doorbell rang. Through the security system's monitor, he saw a woman in her 60s standing nervously on his doorstep, clutching a manila envelope and dabbing at tears with a crumpled tissue. Mrs. Eleanor Rodriguez, the social worker who had been helping Timothy, stood in the Thompson family's elegant foyer with an expression that mixed professional duty with personal emotion. She was a small woman with graying hair and kind eyes that had seen too many children lost in a system that wasn't designed to protect them adequately. "Mr. Thompson, I apologize for coming unannounced, but there's something about Timothy's case that I discovered yesterday. Something extraordinary that I felt you needed to know immediately." Timothy appeared at the top of the marble staircase, having heard the unfamiliar voice. "Mrs. Rodriguez, what are you doing here?" "Hello, sweetheart. I came to see how you're settling in with your new family." She looked around the opulent home with wonder. "This is quite different from the foster homes you're used to." "It's amazing," Timothy said, bounding down the stairs with energy that Marcus hadn't seen before, the natural exuberance of a child who finally felt secure. "Mrs. Rodriguez, this is my dad. My real dad. The DNA test proved it and everything." Eleanor smiled warmly, though her expression remained troubled. "That's wonderful news, Timothy. But there's something else we need to discuss. Mr. Thompson, may I speak with you privately for a moment?" Marcus led her into his study while Timothy reluctantly joined Madison and Mackenzie in the playroom. Eleanor sat heavily in one of the leather chairs, her hands trembling slightly as she opened the manila envelope. "Mr. Thompson, yesterday I was going through Timothy's file to prepare the adoption paperwork when I found something that had been misfiled years ago. A letter that Jennifer Chen left with social services when Timothy was placed in care." Marcus felt his heart stop. "A letter?" She left instructions that it should only be opened if Timothy's biological father was ever identified and came forward to claim him. Eleanor pulled out an envelope with Marcus's name written in Jennifer's familiar handwriting. She somehow knew that someday you would find each other. With shaking hands, Marcus opened the letter that had waited 4 years to be read. Jennifer's voice seemed to speak directly to him across the years. "My dearest Marcus, if you're reading this, it means Timothy has found his way to you, which means I made the right choice even though it was the hardest thing I've ever done. By now you know that Timothy is your son, born March 15th, 9 months after our last night together at Northwestern. I need you to understand why I left without telling you. The night before I disappeared, your father came to see me. He offered me $50,000 to leave Chicago and never contact you again."
He said I was ruining your future. that a poor nurse's daughter had no place in the Thompson family legacy. He said if I truly loved you, I would disappear and let you build the successful life you deserved. Marcus, I was 21 years old, pregnant, scared, and completely in love with you.
Your father convinced me that staying would destroy your dreams. He said the Thompson family would never accept me or our child, and that fighting him would only hurt you in the end. I was wrong to believe him. I was wrong to run. But I was young and terrified, and I thought I was protecting the man I loved from having to choose between his family and me. I've spent every day since then regretting my decision, but I couldn't figure out how to undo it without causing more pain. How do you call someone after 4 years and say, "Surprise, you have a son"? Timothy is the most amazing child, Marcus. He has your intelligence, your stubborn sense of justice, and your protective instincts. He's brave and kind and funny, and he looks at the world like it's full of possibilities instead of disappointments. He's everything good about both of us. If something happens to me, if Timothy ends up in the system, please know that I never stopped loving you. I never stopped hoping that somehow, someday, you would find our son and give him the family he deserves. Take care of our boy, Marcus. Love him enough for both of us. Forever yours, Jennifer. P.S. I kept the engagement ring you gave me. It's in Timothy's baby box at Social Services. Someday, when he's old enough, tell him it represents the love story that created him. Marcus read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face as 17 years of questions finally had answers. His father, the man who had controlled every aspect of Marcus's life until his death, had stolen his son from him, had convinced the woman he loved that she wasn't good enough, that their child would be a burden instead of a blessing. "Mr. Thompson?" Eleanor's gentle voice brought him back to the present. "Are you all right?" "My father," Marcus said, his voice thick with grief and rage. He knew about Timothy. He drove Jennifer away deliberately. Eleanor nodded sadly. "There's more, I'm afraid." Jennifer left detailed instructions about Timothy's care. She wanted him to stay in Chicago in case you ever came looking. She specifically requested placement with families who would encourage his education and protect his kind nature. Then why was he in homes where he was neglected and abused? Eleanor's expression grew pained. "Because the system failed him, Mr. Thompson. Budget cuts, overworked caseworkers, and unfortunately some families who seemed good on paper, but weren't properly monitored. Jennifer's wishes were noted in his file, but weren't consistently followed as he moved between placements. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. The system had failed his son through neglect and incompetence, not malicious interference. He suffered because the system is broken, Marcus said, his voice hollow with grief. "Mr. Thompson, there's something else." Jennifer left more than just the letter. Eleanor reached into her envelope and pulled out a simple envelope with Timothy's name written in Jennifer's handwriting. She wanted you to have this too. Her final letter to Timothy, to be given to him when he found his father. Inside was a brief note and a small photo of Jennifer holding baby Timothy, along with the simple gold chain she had worn every day. She sold the ring to pay for Timothy's care in those early years, Eleanor explained gently. But she kept this photo and her necklace for him. Marcus held the photo and necklace with trembling fingers, remembering Jennifer's face, how she'd looked when they were planning their future together before everything fell apart. Timothy appeared in the doorway, drawn by the adult voices and his natural curiosity. "Dad, is everything okay? You look sad." Marcus looked at his son, this brave, resilient boy who had survived 8 years of hardship with his spirit intact, who had risked everything to save 2 little girls he'd never met, who had somehow found his way home despite every obstacle placed in his path. "Timothy, Mrs. Rodriguez brought me a letter from your mother. Would you like to hear what she wrote about you?" Timothy nodded, settling into the chair next to Marcus with the trust of a child who had finally found safety. Marcus read Jennifer's letter, watching Timothy's face glow with happiness as he heard his mother's words of love and pride. "She really loved me," Timothy said with wonder. "She didn't leave me because she didn't want me. She left because she thought she was protecting both of us," Marcus replied. "But Timothy, there's something else." He showed Timothy the photo and necklace, explaining how his mother had kept these precious mementos for him. This necklace was your mother's most treasured possession. She wore it every day and she wanted you to have it to remember her love. As Timothy carefully held the photo and touched the simple gold necklace, Madison and Mackenzie appeared in the doorway, drawn by the serious conversation. "What's that pretty picture?" Madison asked. "It's me and my mommy when I was a baby," Timothy explained with pride. "And this was her special necklace that she wore every day. Are you going to wear it sometimes to remember her?" Mackenzie asked with 3-year-old directness. Timothy considered this seriously. "Maybe. But first I gotta learn how to be a good Thompson, like Dad taught Madison and Mackenzie." Eleanor Rodriguez watched this family scene with tears in her eyes. In 30 years of social work, she had rarely seen such a perfect resolution to a case that had begun in tragedy. "Mr. Thompson," she said softly, "I have one more thing. Jennifer's personal effects, more photos, Timothy's baby book, some of her nursing school memories. They've been in storage waiting for this day." As Eleanor prepared to leave, promising to expedite the adoption paperwork, Timothy tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Dad, I want to ask you something important." "Anything, son. Can we go visit my mom's grave? I want to tell her that I found you, and that I'm going to take good care of Madison and Mackenzie and that she doesn't have to worry about me anymore." Marcus felt his heart break and heal simultaneously. "Of course we can. We'll bring flowers and tell her all about our family." "And Dad? I want to tell her that you're the best daddy in the whole world, and that she picked exactly the right person to be my father." As the afternoon sun streamed through the study windows, Marcus held his son close and silently thanked Jennifer for the incredible gift she had given him. Not just Timothy, but the chance to be the father he was always meant to be. 3 months later, the Thompson family stood together in Graceland Cemetery on a crisp Saturday morning in December, their breath forming small clouds in the cold air as they approached Jennifer Chen's modest gravestone. Timothy carried a bouquet of white roses, Jennifer's favorite flowers according to her old college friends that Marcus had contacted, while Madison and Mackenzie each held a hand-drawn picture they had made for their big brother's mommy. The marble headstone was simple but elegant. Jennifer Marie Chen, 1985-2019, beloved nurse and mother, her love lives on. Marcus had arranged for the stone to be replaced with one that would honor Jennifer's memory properly, but Timothy had asked to visit the original grave first. "Hi, Mommy," Timothy said softly, kneeling to place the roses at the base of the headstone. "I brought some people I want you to meet." Madison stepped forward with the confident innocence of a 3-year-old who had never learned to be afraid of new situations. "Hi, Timothy's mommy, I'm Madison. I drew you a picture of our whole family together." She placed her crayon drawing against the stone, 5 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, with "family" written in shaky letters across the top. Mackenzie followed her sister's lead, adding her own artwork to the growing memorial. "I drew you flowers because Daddy said you liked pretty things. Timothy takes really good care of us, just like a real big brother should." Marcus knelt beside his children, his arm around Timothy's shoulders. Over the past 3 months, Timothy had grown 2 inches and gained 15 pounds under the care of the family's nutritionist and pediatrician. His face had filled out, his eyes held steady confidence instead of wariness, and his smile came easily now. Most importantly, he had learned to be a child again while still maintaining the wisdom and compassion that had saved his sisters. "Jennifer," Marcus said quietly, "I found our son. I know you can see how amazing he's become, how brave and kind and smart he is. You did an incredible job raising him in those early years. He's everything you said he would be in your letter." Timothy reached into his pocket and pulled out the engagement ring, which he now carried with him everywhere like a talisman. "Mommy, I want you to know that Dad asked me to be a Thompson officially. The judge signed all the papers last week, so now I'm Timothy Chen Thompson. I kept your name too, so part of you will always be with me." The adoption ceremony had been a celebration unlike anything Timothy could have imagined. Judge Patricia Williams, moved by the extraordinary circumstances of the case, had allowed the entire extended Thompson family to attend. Marcus's business partners, the twins' godparents, even Detective Santos and Mrs. Rodriguez had come to witness Timothy officially becoming a Thompson. "And Mommy," Timothy continued, I want you to know that your plan worked. Dad found me because I was protecting Madison and Mackenzie, just like you taught me to protect people who need help. If you hadn't made me brave and good, I never would have been able to save them. Marcus felt tears threatening as he watched his son's mature understanding of how fate had brought them together. Timothy had not only forgiven Jennifer for the choices she made, he had come to see them as part of a larger plan that ultimately reunited their family. A gentle snow began to fall, dusting the cemetery with pristine white that made the December morning feel magical rather than somber. Madison and Mackenzie immediately began trying to catch snowflakes on their tongues, their laughter providing a joyful soundtrack to the memorial moment. "There's something else, Jennifer," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the quiet cemetery. "Timothy's been accepted to the University of Chicago Laboratory School for next fall, full scholarship which he earned entirely on his own merit. His test scores are off the charts. He definitely got your intelligence along with your compassion." Timothy blushed at the praise. The private school had been Marcus's suggestion, but Timothy had insisted on taking the entrance exams without any family influence. When he scored in the 99th percentile in every subject, the admissions committee had offered him a place in their gifted program immediately. "I want to study science like you did, Mommy. Maybe become a doctor so I can help people the way you helped people." "Tell her about the foundation," Madison prompted, having overheard enough adult conversations to know this was important. Marcus smiled at his daughter's memory. "Jennifer, we're starting a foundation in your name, the Jennifer Chen Thompson Foundation for Foster Care Reform." Timothy suggested it. "We're going to work to fix the system that failed him, make sure other kids don't have to go through what he experienced." The foundation had been Timothy's idea, born from his desire to help other children still trapped in situations like his former foster homes. Marcus had been amazed by his son's maturity in wanting to turn his painful experiences into something that could help others. "We're going to make sure all the kids get enough food and safe houses and people who actually care about them," Timothy explained to the gravestone. "And we're going to make sure nobody like mean Mr. Peterson ever gets to hurt kids again." The investigation into Timothy's former foster placements had revealed systematic abuse and neglect across multiple homes. With Marcus's resources and legal team behind the effort, charges had been filed, and the foster care system was undergoing major reforms. Timothy's courage in speaking up had not only saved Madison and Mackenzie, but potentially hundreds of other vulnerable children. As they prepared to leave the cemetery, Timothy had one final message for his mother. "Mommy, I need you to know something really important. I'm not sad anymore. I'm not angry about the foster homes or being hungry or any of that stuff, because all of it led me to Dad and Madison and Mackenzie." He paused, his 7-year-old wisdom shining through his earnest expression. "I think maybe you and God made a plan together. You knew that Dad would need me to save my sisters, and you knew that saving them would bring us all together. So thank you for being brave enough to let me go so I could find my way home." Marcus felt his breath catch at his son's profound understanding of forgiveness and purpose. Timothy had not only survived his difficult childhood, he had transformed it into meaning. "And Mommy," Timothy added with a mischievous grin that reminded Marcus painfully of Jennifer, "Dad says when I'm older maybe I can give your ring to someone special, but only if she's as kind and smart and brave as you were. That's going to be pretty hard to find, but I'm a Thompson now, so I don't give up easy." As they walked back toward the car, Madison slipped her small hand into Timothy's. "Timothy, do you think your mommy liked our pictures?" "I think she loved them," Timothy replied with confidence. "And I think she's really happy that I have the best little sisters in the whole world to take care of." "We take care of you too," Mackenzie pointed out with 3-year-old logic. "That's what families do." Marcus listened to his children's conversation with a heart so full of love and gratitude that he could barely contain it. Jennifer's sacrifice, his father's cruelty, Timothy's suffering, the random chance that put Timothy on that airplane at exactly the right moment, all of it had led to this perfect family that never could have existed without each tragedy and triumph that preceded it. That evening, as Marcus tucked all 3 children into their beds, Timothy asked the question that had been on his mind all day. "Dad, do you think Mom would be proud of the man I'm becoming?" Marcus sat on the edge of Timothy's bed looking at his son's face in the soft glow of the nightlight. "Timothy, Your mother would be incredibly proud. But more than that, I think she knew exactly who you would become. She saw your strength and your goodness even when you were tiny, and she trusted that those qualities would guide you home. I love you, Dad. I love you too, son. Sweet dreams. As Marcus turned off the light and headed toward the door, Timothy's voice stopped him one more time. Dad, tomorrow can we start planning Madison and Mackenzie's birthday party? I want to make sure it's the best party ever because they're the best little sisters ever. Marcus smiled in the darkness, thinking about how completely Timothy had embraced his role as big brother. Of course we can. What did you have in mind? Something with butterflies. Because that's what you call them, and because butterflies are beautiful and free and safe, just like our family is now. As Marcus closed the door to his son's room, he reflected on the miracle of their reunion. Timothy Chen Thompson, the boy who had saved his sisters without knowing they were his sisters, who had found his father by being exactly the kind of person his father would be proud to call son, who had transformed tragedy into triumph through pure strength of character. Outside, snow continued to fall on Chicago, blanketing the city in pristine white that promised new beginnings. Inside the Thompson home, a family that had been separated by fear and prejudice slept peacefully, finally complete after 17 years of missing pieces. And somewhere in the starlit silence between earth and heaven, Jennifer Chen smiled, knowing that her greatest act of love had finally brought her two favorite people together, along with two little girls who would grow up protected by the bravest big brother in the world. The flight that never left had carried them all home at last.
1 year later, the Thompson family gathered in their backyard for Madison and Mackenzie's 4th birthday party. The garden was transformed into a butterfly wonderland, with delicate decorations fluttering from every tree branch and colorful flowers creating a living rainbow across the manicured lawn.
Timothy, now 8.5 years old and nearly unrecognizable from the thin, scared boy who had boarded that airplane, stood proudly beside an elaborate butterfly-shaped cake he had helped design. Timothy, tell everyone about your award. Madison called out to the crowd of family friends, classmates, and extended family members who had gathered to celebrate. Timothy blushed but stepped forward with the confidence of a child who had learned his worth. In his hands he held a crystal trophy, the Chicago Youth Courage Award, presented to him just 2 weeks earlier by the mayor herself for his heroic actions and subsequent advocacy work for foster children. Last week they passed Timothy's law, he announced to the gathering, his voice clear and strong. It means foster kids have to get better food, safer homes, and people actually have to check on them to make sure they're okay. The crowd erupted in applause, but Timothy wasn't finished. And next month, we're opening the first Jennifer Chen Thompson safe house for kids who don't have anywhere to go. It's going to have bedrooms for 12 kids and a big kitchen where they can always get enough to eat, and a library and counselors who actually listen. Marcus watched his son with overwhelming pride. Timothy had not only recovered from his traumatic childhood, he had channeled his experiences into becoming a powerful advocate for change. The foundation bearing his mother's name had already helped reform foster care policies in 3 states, with Timothy serving as its youngest board member and most compelling spokesperson. And the best part, Timothy continued with a grin, is that kids at the safe house get to learn martial arts and self-defense, so they can protect themselves and other people who need help. Detective Maria Santos, now a close family friend, raised her glass in a toast. To Timothy Thompson, who proved that heroes come in all sizes, and sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths. As the party continued around them, Marcus found himself sitting quietly with Eleanor Rodriguez, the social worker who had become like a grandmother to the children. She watched Timothy teaching a group of younger children how to fold origami butterflies, his patience and kindness evident in every interaction. You know, Eleanor said softly, I've been doing this job for 35 years, and I've seen thousands of children pass through the system. Timothy is the only one who took his pain and turned it into purpose so completely. He amazes me every day, Marcus replied. Last week he asked if we could start taking in emergency foster placements here at the house. He wants to help other kids feel safe while they wait for their permanent families. And what did you tell him? Marcus smiled, watching Timothy carefully help a shy 6-year-old girl with her butterfly craft. I told him we'd start the paperwork tomorrow. This house has plenty of room and Timothy's right. We have the resources to provide immediate safe harbor for children in crisis. Eleanor nodded approvingly. Jennifer would be so proud. Not just of Timothy, but of the man you've become too, Marcus. You were always meant to be a father. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the celebration, Timothy found himself alone for a moment with Madison and Mackenzie. The twins, now 4 years old, had grown into confident, joyful children who adored their big brother and never doubted their place in the world. Timothy, Madison said seriously, when we grow up, we want to help kids like you help kids. Yeah, Mackenzie added with determination. We want to be heroes too. Timothy knelt down to their level, his expression tender and proud. You know what makes someone a real hero? He asked them. Being brave? Madison guessed. Being kind? Mackenzie tried. Both of those things, Timothy confirmed. But the most important thing is caring about people who can't take care of themselves. And you two already do that. Remember when you shared your lunch with that new girl at preschool who forgot hers? The twins nodded solemnly. That's being heroes. Heroes don't have to save people from airplanes, although that was pretty cool. He added with a grin. Heroes just have to notice when someone needs help and decide to do something about it. Later that evening, after the last guest had gone home and the twins were tucked safely in their beds, Timothy sat in his father's study working on his homework. At 8 years old, he was already reading at a high school level and excelling in every subject, but he approached his education with the same seriousness he brought to everything else. Marcus found him there, bent over a math workbook with intense concentration. Dad? Timothy said without looking up. I've been thinking about something. What's that, son? Do you think there are other kids like me out there? Kids whose real families are looking for them but can't find them because of people like grandfather? Marcus felt his chest tighten. Timothy had only recently learned the full truth about Richard Thompson's interference in his life, and he was still processing the implications. Unfortunately, yes, there probably are. Then I want to help find them. When I grow up, I want to be a detective or a lawyer or something that helps lost kids find their real families. Timothy looked up from his homework with eyes that held wisdom far beyond his years. I had the best mom in the world, and then I found the best dad in the world, and now I have the best sisters in the world. Other kids deserve to have that too. Marcus sat down beside his son, marveling once again at Timothy's capacity for turning personal pain into universal compassion. You know what, Timothy? I think that's exactly what you should do, and I think your mother would be incredibly proud of that choice. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think she knew? When she was making the decision to leave, do you think Mom somehow knew that everything would work out the way it did? Marcus considered the question carefully. Son, I think your mother loved us both so much that she was willing to sacrifice her own happiness to protect ours. Whether she knew the specific outcome or not, she trusted that love would find a way to bring us together when the time was right. Timothy nodded, satisfied with that answer. I'm glad she did, because if she hadn't left, you wouldn't have learned how to be such a good dad with Madison and Mackenzie first. And I wouldn't have learned how to be brave and protect people. And when the scary man tried to take our sisters, we wouldn't have been ready. Once again, Timothy's perspective left Marcus speechless. His 8-year-old son had just articulated a view of providence and purpose that most adults struggled to understand. Besides, Timothy added with a mischievous smile that was pure Jennifer, if Mom hadn't left, I never would have gotten to be the big brother who saves the day. And that was pretty awesome. As Marcus tucked Timothy into bed that night, his son had one final thought to share. Dad, tomorrow is Sunday. Can we go visit Mom again? I want to tell her about Madison and Mackenzie's party, and about Timothy's law passing and about the safe house opening. Of course we can. What else do you want to tell her? Timothy thought for a moment, his expression serious in the dim light from the hallway. I want to tell her that I forgive grandfather. Not because what he did was okay, but because holding on to anger makes you tired, and I've got too much good stuff to do to be tired. Marcus felt tears spring to his eyes. His son's capacity for forgiveness and growth continued to astound him. That's very wise, Timothy. And Dad, I want to tell her that you're going to ask Jessica to marry you soon, and that Jessica is really nice and loves all of us, and that Mom would like her a lot." Marcus nearly choked on his surprise. He had been planning to propose to Dr. Jessica Williams, the pediatrician who had been caring for Timothy and had become a close family friend over the past year. But he had no idea Timothy had figured out his intentions. "How did you know about that?" Timothy grinned in the darkness. "Dad, you bought a ring and hid it in your sock drawer. Madison found it 3 weeks ago. We've all been waiting for you to ask her. And you're okay with that, all of you? Dad, Jessica makes you smile the way you look in those old pictures with Mom. And she's really good with kids, and she's smart and kind, and she even knows the butterfly song now. Plus, she brings us ice cream and lets us help her with easy doctor stuff." Timothy paused, then added with characteristic wisdom, "Mom's letter said she wanted you to be happy. Jessica makes you happy, so Mom would want you to marry her." As Marcus kissed Timothy goodnight, he marveled at how completely his son had embraced the idea of their family continuing to grow and change. Timothy had learned early that families could be complicated, but he had also learned that love had infinite capacity to expand and include new people. "Sweet dreams, son. Sweet dreams, Dad. And tomorrow when we see Mom, we can tell her that our family is perfect now, but it's still got room for more perfect people." Marcus closed the door to Timothy's room with a heart so full of gratitude he could barely contain it. His son, the boy who had saved his daughters without knowing they were his sisters, who had found his father by being exactly the kind of person any father would be proud to claim, who had transformed every tragedy in his young life into a force for good in the world. Outside, snow was beginning to fall again on Chicago, just as it had that December day they first visited Jennifer's grave. But this time, the snow felt like a blessing instead of tears, a gentle reminder that sometimes the most beautiful things come after the hardest storms. The flight that never left had indeed carried them all home, and now they were building something even more beautiful than what had been lost. A family defined not by the circumstances of their beginning, but by the strength of their choice to love each other completely, exactly as they were. And somewhere in the quiet space between memory and hope, Jennifer Chen smiled, knowing that her greatest gift to the world was sleeping peacefully under the same roof as the man she had never stopped loving, surrounded by the children who would carry forward the best of both their parents into a future, bright with infinite possibility.